Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into SEC Nightly, the nightly show dedicated to the top news and notes from the nation's top conference. I am your humble host, Brooks Austin, and if you haven't already noticed by, what's on the screen right here, if you're watching on the live stream, it is a little of a less formal show tonight. Typically, I'm in a nice, suit jacket and a button down. Tonight, we're in the Belichick hoodie, right? The 3/4 sleeve. In honor of Super Bowl week. I know the Patriots aren't in the Super Bowl, but, a mainstay in the Super Bowl, typically, the Belichick hoodie. So I figured, why not break it out tonight on tonight's broadcast? But anyways, SEC Nightly, if you guys don't know by now, Monday through Friday, we do this little gig over here starting at 9 o'clock, again, to hit on all the top news and notes from, again, the nation's top conference, SEC. It doesn't get much better than this conference down here, whether it be football, basketball, or even baseball, or any other sport for that matter. SEC pretty much has a mainstay in the top ranks in all of them. Tonight, obviously, coming up on the Super Bowl, right? Hence the Belichick hoodie. We already talked about it. But tonight we're going to go through, some Super Bowl talking points, including the 21 guys from the SEC rosters and SEC schools on the two Super Bowl rosters, the Chiefs and the 49ers. Will give you a Super Bowl prediction as well and open up the mailbag. If you're watching the broadcast tonight, man, send in the questions as you so feel free. We will be doing the AMA today. So whether it's recruiting, anything you want, hit us up, hit us up in the comments right there. Give us some questions. We'll open up AMA towards the end of the show. So a little bit of a mailbag session here. Something, again, Friday night, it's late here, Friday night, 9 o'clock. I don't know what you guys are doing on a Friday night, but I'm sitting in my nice little faux studio in front of this little green screen talking SEC Nightly. But let's get into this Super Bowl broadcast. I expect tonight's show to be rather quick. We got to get to some other stuff here on a Friday night. But let's talk about this Super Bowl, man. Again, 21 SEC football players on Super Bowl rosters. 11 of 14 SEC schools represented, the only ones missing out, Missouri, Mississippi State, and Kentucky. LSU led the way with 5 players on Super Bowl rosters, which is kind of impressive, right? 5 guys from LSU. And to think about it, they haven't really been a national powerhouse. They've been in contention for quite some time. They finally get the national championship this past year, and they'll send a handful of guys to the NFL. Last night's show, we talked about the guys that are getting first round grades right now from the SEC schools. 5 of those guys are from the defending national champs. A couple of them are early risers. So anyways, back to these guys on these Super Bowl rosters. LSU leading the way. 20.7% of these Super Bowl rosters are made up of SEC football players, more than any other conference, as one would expect. 11 on the Kansas City Chiefs roster and 10 on the San Francisco 49ers roster. As for my prediction of how the Super Bowl is going to go, look, I think this is one of the more fascinating Super Bowl matchups we've had in recent memory, and here's why. You're looking at a real contrast of styles. I mean, I know both of these teams are extremely fast. They're basically track teams out there between Kansas City and San Francisco. In fact, Pro Football Focus ranked these two teams as the fastest teams in the NFL per average speed rate per position player. I don't know what all that means. All I know is that they're fast. If you watch them, they can absolutely run up and down the field. And if you look what Kansas City can do, right? They're made to throw the football. Patrick Mahomes, one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback, most talented quarterback for sure. We can just go ahead and mark that off, right? Most talented quarterback, can make all of the throws. One of the very few in the NFL that can do so at the quarterback position. He's going to throw it all over the yard. But San Francisco allowed 168 yards per game through the air this season. Less than anybody else in the National Football League. Think about that. Less than 170 yards per game in the regular season through the air. That is absolutely phenomenal. And it's a lot of zone defense, right? They're trying to keep guys in front of you. Don't play a whole lot of man-to-man, which is something that Kansas City tries to force you to do. It's similar to what we saw LSU do this season in the SEC, where they try to force you into man-to-man situations by spreading you out across the field. And I really do think Kansas City is going to be forced to throw the ball maybe 35, 45 times in the Super Bowl come Saturday, because that rush defense and that defense in general from San Francisco is probably going to be able to shut it down. And if Kansas City is going to beat you, that's how they're going to beat you, through the air, right? But again, contrast the styles here. Kansas City loves to throw it through the air. San Francisco, the best team in the NFL this year against the pass. All right, now flip it over to the other end, right? San Francisco's offense. What are they trying to do? Kyle Shanahan's really, really run heavy. In fact, they got to the Super Bowl by only throwing the ball, I think, 11 times in the NFC Championship game. So they don't have to throw it to beat you. They can run it down your throat and do it really, really successfully. Kansas City, on the other end, really, really susceptible, to the run game, right? 26th in the NFL this year in yards allowed per game on the ground, just under 130. So they've been susceptible to the run over the last several years, but I think that has a lot to do with their personnel on the defensive line. Look, Frank Clark, Chris Jones, all these guys are real pass heavy, real, pass rush heavy defensive linemen. So they're not really in there to stop the run, even though Chris Jones at 6'7", almost 6'7", 6'6 and a half, about 310, 315 pounds, an incredible athlete, an incredible defense lineman. He can, be a game wrecker, but still coming off that calf injury that he, somehow suffered in the locker room of all places leading up to that AFC Championship game, the AFC divisional round. He missed that one, was able to play against Tennessee and made a drastic impact. I think, everyone wants to talk about getting pressure on Patrick Mahomes. I just don't know how reasonable that is to expect. If you're going into this game, I know there's 5 first-rounders on that defensive line, but that isn't stopping Andy Reid from designing quick, release points and quick plays, especially to a guy like Travis Kelce. If you're going to sit in a zone and rush 4 or rush 5, Travis is going to find an open hole or an open seam in that zone defense, and they'll be able to complete passes. I do think that. But, if I really had to pick, and that's what we're here for. We're here to give you a suggestion and a pick on this Super Bowl and a Super Bowl prediction, if you will. I do think San Francisco wins this football game because, everyone talks about it. How do you beat a great quarterback? How do you beat a great offense if you can't stop them? Well, keep the ball out of their hands, okay? Well, San Francisco is going to likely be able to do that come Sunday with that ability to run the football. So with that, we'll go ahead and start sending in the questions. I know, again, we already told you we're just 8 minutes into tonight's broadcast. It's going to be a quick one. I'm not really super prepared and super in depth to go into to what's going on in the conference tonight. There's not that much breaking news other than I believe there was some actually today. And here's what it was. I'll go ahead and get into it while you're sending in your questions into the broadcast. Anything. It could be SEC related, Georgia specific. I know most of my social media following is Georgia fans. If you've got some Georgia questions, whether it be about Dejon Edwards or any other recruiting-based questions, feel free to get those in right now. But there was a story today on SI.com about the Big Ten trying to enact a new rule that basically says if you enter in to the Big Ten as via a transfer, you're likely not going to have to sit out, to which I will respond to this. I know a lot of people will say that's the Big Ten just trying to make it easier for guys like Justin Fields to enter into their conference. And though that is, the case, it is basically the case. What I will tell you is it's very, very similar. And this is what I was telling Blaine Gilmer, my partner over there at the Bulldog Maven, who actually sent me the article because he's great about breaking news. That's what I love about Blaine. That's why we're so good at it. If you guys haven't noticed, when we break stuff, it's because Blaine's all over social media. So follow him on social media at BGilmer18. There's nobody that much better than Blaine right now in the business when it comes to finding and getting to the breaking news. But anyways, back to what we were talking about here. The Big Ten, with the new rule, it's similar to pay for play. I don't think they're going to enact and pass a rule or put a rule like that up for debate if they didn't already have some type of feeling or indication that the rest of the conferences would be open to the discussion of doing so. It's where we're going, right? The transfer portal. There was over 400 names in the transfer portal this past, this offseason. Still a crap load of names in that transfer portal right now as we speak still. So it's the way college football is going. These high level recruits, if they're going to sit, they don't want to sit long. They want to go to a new place where they have a better opportunity to play. And you know what? more power to him. I'm all about player freedom. If you haven't figured that out, I'm a player's guy. Never going to be here for restricting the freedoms of 19 to 24-year-old kids. I mean, that's just not what I'm into. That's not my game. So we got some questions rattling in. We'll hit them right now. Kobe Ellis here on the YouTube page asked me if I'm predicting a Hardman touchdown. Okay, look, McCole Hardman's going to get a handful of touches. I would say, via the punt game, and they always have a design play or two for him. You have a really good opportunity for number 17 for the Kansas City Chiefs to be scoring a touchdown in this Super Bowl. And this is a guy who loves playing in big games, right? I could legitimately see Andy Reid drawing a play up for him to get him behind that zone defense. Okay, if they're going to sit behind in a cover 3 zone, well, I guarantee you they're going to play Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman likely in the same formation, which means as a zone defense, you're going to have to cover one of them deep. And if they send 2 of them into the formation and you've got to pick one or the 2, you're probably going to pick to double Tyreek Hill, leaving McCole Hardman open. So would I bank on it? Would I bet on it? Probably not. Not a huge prop bet guy, but I think there's a decent possibility that McCole Hardman scores. And if he does, it's going to be a big explosive play, 20 yards plus out. And maybe, you know what, he gets a jet sweep kind of touchdown or something similar and simple like that. On to our next question. Who's my Super Bowl MVP? That's a really good question. And here's a little tip for those who don't know, if you haven't figured it out by now. When broadcasters or radio personalities, when they say that you have a good question, that's just their way of stalling. Just like I bought another 20 seconds by explaining that to you. Super Bowl MVP, the bet and the easy money is Pat Mahomes. Again, if the Kansas City Chiefs win, it's going to be on the back of a 360, 300 to 80, 400-yard passing game from number 15 for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think they're going to be able to put a run game together again against that Chiefs defense. All right, on to some next questions. We got Jalen in here over from the Twitter sphere. Which quarterback will rebound in 2020? Ooh, a college question. I like this. Which quarterback will rebound in 2020 who had a bad year? Okay, Kellen Mond didn't necessarily have a bad year in the SEC at Texas A&M last year in his junior season. But if Texas A&M is going to win 10, 11, 12 games like so many experts are picking them to do with a very, very easy schedule, Kellen Mond's going to have to play a lot better next year. And you know what? The first 10 games of that schedule are going to lend him to the possibility of it happening. So whether or not the stats get that much better, because he has been a stat racker since he's been there at A&M as a starting quarterback, he's put up good numbers. Okay, he's been a yards, touchdowns, and completion percentage kind of guy. Maybe not completion percentage, but he's put up a ton of yards, and he's put up a ton of yards on the ground as well. All-purpose yards, been up there in the lead in the SEC since he's become a starter. So will he make a huge jump? I don't know, but he will, quote unquote, rebound, or at least that's what the media will lead you to believe. Because again, that first 10 games of that schedule is borderline a joke. The toughest game in that first 10 games for them is Auburn. And I believe they get that football game at home. So on to our next question. Let's see here. We got 2-point conversation on a sidekick. I don't know what that means, Colby Ellis. We're going to go on to our next question. Who is the first coach to be fired in the SEC this season? First coach to be fired. All right. First coach to catch the hot seat. I think Vanderbilt's got a little touchy situation there with Derek Mason. I love Derek Mason as a football coach, but is that fan base? Is that booster? Maybe not the fan base. It's the boosters you got to worry about there at Vanderbilt. It's a private institution with a lot of money there in Nashville. Do they get sick and tired of watching 6-6 to 8-4 being your ceiling there at Vanderbilt, which I think that is your ceiling? I'm sorry. Anytime your freshman recruits, anytime your freshman football players have to come in and take college calculus as a true freshman, that's a detriment to your recruiting capabilities. It's always going to be, okay? So whether or not he does get fired, I think, we got a lot of new coaches in the SEC, right? Mississippi State got a new coach. Ole Miss has a new coach. Missouri has a new coach. They're scattered all across the conference. Stoops at Kentucky, as firm as you're going to get as a college coach right now, what he's doing right there at Kentucky, first top 25 recruiting class in over 2 decades. Mark Stoops not going anywhere, barring, some type of 3-8 football season, 3-9 football season there in Kentucky. So I think everyone's in pretty, safe waters right now as we speak. Even Jeremy Pruitt won his last 6 games there at Tennessee. So I don't think you're going to see any coaches fired anytime soon in the SEC. On to our next one. This one comes from John Convict. Interesting name there, John, or Jay Convict, excuse me. Don't want to assume your first name. Jay Convict, if Lanning leaves for a head coaching job after next year, can you see Kirby going after Muschamp once he gets fired? You know what? That's a good one. Totally forgot. Muschamp on the hot seat out there in South Carolina. Good job right there, Jay Convict, of reminding me of that. But I don't think you're going to see a terrible season from South Carolina this year. You know, borderline 500 to a 7-5 football team out there. And yes, I do think there's definitely mutual respect between Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp. As for whether or not Dan Lanning's going to leave for a head coaching job, that's yet to be seen. But I will tell you this: there is going to be a lot of programs, maybe not Power 5 programs, maybe the FCS level or non-Power 5 schools that will be after him. Maybe I don't know what the coaching situation is going on over there at Memphis, but we know he was there as a defensive coordinator. We're talking about that kind of a school when you're talking about a first-time head coach, especially as one as young as Dan Lanning. Whether or not he's going to be successful, I do think he will be successful as a head coach because, again, he's going to be a dynamite recruiter. He's going to coach with a lot of energy, which young kids respond to these days. If you guys haven't noticed that, look at some of the coaches. Outside of Nick Saban, let's look at them. Ed Ogeron, Kirby Smart. Dan Mullen's a totally different scenario, but he even tries to have a lot of energy. It's not a lot of great energy. It's a lot of, awkward uncle energy. But the successful ones are doing it with a ton of energy, and young coaches are the new wave. We've even seen it at the NFL level as well. On to our next question. Here we go. Is Jake Fromm a first rounder? This one comes from Allie Ann over there on YouTube as well. Allie, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been one of the biggest Jake Fromm defenders. He is not a first-round caliber quarterback in terms of an NFL draft prospect. Now, that being said, here's the caveat. Jake Fromm's going to go to the NFL Combine. Jake Fromm's going to be interviewed by 25 NFL football teams and NFL general managers and even a handful of owners. And I can tell you this right now. If you've ever been around Jake Fromm, if you've ever listened to him in a post-game press conference, if you ever talked to some of his teammates, if you talked to some of his former coaches or current coaches, it's hard not to love that guy. It's hard not to leave a conversation with him and think, wow, that is a leader of men. Okay. And that type of intangible is going to could make a general manager of an owner leave a meeting and say, that's our guy. And to be honest with you, it only takes one. It absolutely 100% only takes one NFL owner to tell his general manager, I don't care what you say about his 40. I don't care what you say about his arm strength. I don't care what you say about his ability to be mobile inside the pocket. I don't care what you say about his height and his physical frame. That guy is an NFL leader. That guy can lead my clubhouse. It only takes one of those. So is he a first-round talent? I don't believe so. I think he's reached his physical ceiling. And as we've talked about at the Bulldog Maven over there on our sites, with almost every Jake Fromm article we've written recently about his draft grade, NFL draft evaluators, NFL scouts, NFL GMs, they're looking for ascending players. In other words, they're looking for players that they can bank on getting better leaving college. And I genuinely think Jake Fromm's reached at least his physical ceiling. Now, can he get better mentally? Again, I don't know how much room there is really to grow at that point either, because he's as good from the neck up as I've ever seen at the college level. Let's hit on to some more of these. Morgan, I was listening to the show earlier in the week. Should Zach Evans declare to the XFL, do you think that would open doors against the NCAA to start seeing players head that path? All right, quick little note about our little segment on SEC Nightly the other night about Zach Evans potentially going to the XFL. We don't exactly know what the rules are in terms of eligibility are with the NFL draft right now, or excuse me, the XFL, what their rules are in terms of whether or not you have to play at least one season in the college ranks, or whether or not you can come straight out of high school. What I will tell you this is, if you're the XFL, you want to survive in spring football, you might want to start figuring out a way to get people to bring attention to your network, right? And I think one great way to do that is to allow some of the top high school prospects to at least flirt with the opportunity and the idea of entering your league. Okay, whether or not you're going to do the 3 years in college to enter that league is definitely not a rule. It's just whether or not they're going to make kids stay at least a season in college before they enter the XFL. That being said, what are the rules going to be? Is it going to be, hey, you can spend 1 semester at a JUCO level and then enter in the spring of the very next season when they start the 2021 XFL season? I don't know what the rules are going to be. And again, we're going to have to wait that out. But I do think it is a situation and it is an option that a guy like Zach Evans might have to explore. To be honest with you, we don't know the full situation there. No one does. If they're telling you they do, they're probably fibbing to you, okay? He's not coming to Georgia. Dejon Edwards' commitment yesterday pretty much sealed that up. And whether or not he's able to even sign another letter of intent come February 5th, we just don't know. So what keeps them from spending a semester or a full season at JUCO and then entering the XFL? Nothing. I don't think anything keeps him from doing that. Again, we're taking all questions here on the live stream, so we're going to do this for a couple more minutes and then get it in. From our podcast audience, I know this probably isn't, the best format and best way of doing this, but, while we're waiting on questions, if you guys want to pause it and hit it with a 5-star rating and a review, we'd appreciate that greatly. On to our next question. Let's see here. David D. Who needs a bigger year in the SEC, Jimbo Fisher or Kirby Smart? All right. I think this is one of the simpler questions we might get tonight. And to answer your question, David, I don't think Kirby Smart's anywhere near a hot seat, okay? I know Georgia fans are dying for a national championship, but what I'm also telling you is the buzz around Georgia's program, the real feeling and real sentiment of this might be our year. This is going to be our year. It's never been higher than this moment right now. Over the past 3 seasons, I think 2017, if you really asked Georgia fans if they thought they'd be playing for a national championship in Kirby Smart's second year, I think they would have told you they'd be a little bit remiss, or they would be lying to you, basically. There's no way you could have predicted that or thought that was going to happen in year 2. And for him to be, a game away, a snap away, a backup quarterback away from, playing in multi-national championship games and potentially winning one, I think Georgia fans are satisfied there. So, barring, again, some catastrophe where all the wheels fall off in some sense, and 6-6 is a wheels fall off situation, and that's not happening there in Athens this coming up year. I think Jimbo Fisher is on a bigger hot seat, even in year 2 or year 3, whatever he's in over there in that multi, $7.5, $8 million contract per year that he's in, that 10-year deal. They're not firing him either, but I think he's got to prove that he can win 10 games in the SEC with an easy schedule this coming up season. So let's see. We got some questions in here. Does Jamie Newman have to have a career year for Georgia to win the national championship? So a career year for Jamie at this point would be eclipsing 2,800 yards through the air and eclipsing 800 yards on the ground. I'm going to tell you right now, if Jamie Newman has a career year at the University of Georgia, they're going to be a national championship contender. I think that is, I don't want to say it's a lock because you don't know what's going to happen around him. But if we're talking about 3,000 yards through the air and maybe 1,000 yards on the ground, holy smokes. How can you not? If you went into the season knowing those statistical measures, how could you not think that Georgia's going to win a national championship in 2020? I just don't know what the scenario would be. Again, if he put up something that astronomical, that would be absolutely nuts. So, yeah, if he has a career year statistically, we could see a Heisman Trophy, in Athens for the first time since 1982. And here's the deal. The last 4 Heisman Trophy winners have been transfer quarterbacks. What is Jamie Newman? Jamie Newman is a transfer quarterback, right? And it could make it 5 in a row if Justin Fields wins too. So I think it's very good chance that you're going to see another transfer quarterback win a Heisman Trophy winner, or win a Heisman Trophy. Now, as for whether or not, again, back to what we were talking about with Jamie Newman, if he has a career year, yeah, you're talking about a serious shot at the national championship, especially because I'm I'm just not a firm believer in what's going to come out of the West. Again, there's not great quarterback play out there in the West for the first time in quite a long time. That's not to say there's not great teams, though, because Alabama's still going to be stacked and loaded. All right, Hunter Davis, let's see here. I think he's asking a question in here to another person. So we're going to wrap up here in another, 2 or 3 minutes. If you guys got any more questions, feel free to send those in right there. Just while we're, waiting on those, again, man, however, wherever you found this broadcast, man, give us some support. If it's on Facebook, hit that share button, hit that like button, whatever it is, hit that thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube as well. And if you're watching us on Twitter, just tap that screen, send those hearts flying, and send us up that Periscope board. Who does UGA finish the class with on Wednesday? Feeling really good about Cedric Van Pran. Would 99.9% guarantee he's going to sign with Georgia come February. And then as for Broderick Jones, and again, I think that is the pronunciation. My boy John Garcia comes on here and pronounces it Broderick. And I'm going to tell you right now, that guy's as pros get. If he's pronouncing it that way, that's the way Broderick prefers his name pronounced. So I'm going to continue to do it that way. I think Broderick ends up signing with Georgia as well, the 5-star tackle out of Lithonia. Now, there's room to debate who's going to get the last couple of spots, whether or not they're going to be scholarship athletes or whether or not Kirby's going to figure out the numbers to fit them into the class with whether or not they're good academically and whether or not they can get Zell Miller, some of the in-state guys in particular. But some names to look out for, obviously Ladd McConkey and DJ Lundy are the two guys I would be looking out for to end up adding on to the already number one class overall. I do not have a video breakdown for tonight. I think we're going to try to get to the tight ends probably after this broadcast. I'll have to get in there and break down the tight ends film, which, I say have to, but let's be honest, guys. You guys know me by now, especially if you've been following my work here on the YouTube page. I'm a football guy. I love breaking down the film, even if it means me uploading YouTube clips at 2:00 in the morning. You guys like it. You guys support it. So I end up doing it. All right. Last question. We're going to take, no, it's not even a question. I think Brian Adams hopped in there and said the breakdown of Vandergriff was amazing. The kid does have a laser attached to his shoulder column. It's nuts. It's a laser show. If you guys haven't checked that out, head over to my YouTube page and go look at that Brock Vandergriff highlight tape breakdown. I just did Dejon Edwards' highlight tape. Get rid, man, please, if you guys leave tonight's broadcast, and we're really jumping up in numbers right now as I speak and as I'm about to close, if you guys take anything from tonight's broadcast, please understand this, that when you see a kid's 40 time on 24/7 Sports and it says 4.81, please stop reading that stuff and marking the kid off. That's not what you need to do. If you're a talent evaluator, if you're someone who's going to sit down and make a decision about whether or not, especially if you're a fan, if you're going to be sitting there making a decision about whether or not a kid's going to bring value to your favorite team's program, please, please, please take the time to grind the tape. Don't just watch the highlight tapes from 1 year. Watch them for 3 or 4 years. If all you've got access to is the huddle and the highlights tape, please go watch it and make an educated decision about what you think about that young man before you go to social media and drag him because he ran a 40 2.5 years ago and it was a 4.81. Okay. Before you go do any of that kind of stuff, please grind the tape. And if you don't have time to grind the tape, head on to my YouTube page because I guarantee you I already have, okay? And it's the same thing going with Brock, right? People want to ask me, hey, what's the difference between Brock and Caleb Williams? Well, Caleb Williams is a twitchy athlete. He might run a 4.5, okay? But guess what? Brock Vandergriff might be listed as a pro-style quarterback, but he's a 4.6 runner. Okay, he's a former top 100 baseball player as well. Shortstop, outfielder, 90 off the bump. Okay, can dunk a basketball. Today went over 300 pounds on the power clean. We're talking about explosive athletes, and just because some recruiting service says they are a pro style or says they run a 4.81, that is not what you need to make your estimation and your assumption off of the kid about. Take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes to watch the kid's tape, to find out what he's really about before you just, read a recruiting profile. Again, whether that's SI All-American, whether that's 24/7, whether that's Rivals, they all do great work. And you know what? More times than not, they all hit. They're right. More times than not, they are right. but they're going to miss on a few guys. Okay. So Dejon Edwards being outside the top 250, I don't think he's a bottom 250 player. And that's just the case right there. Any more questions? If not, we are going to wrap up tonight's broadcast. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Again, this is SEC Nightly. This is Friday night's broadcast. Typically, we're a lot more formal. Typically, we have some guests join in on the broadcast and talk some great stuff around the SEC. But you know what? Tonight was Friday night. Tonight was the mailbag edition, so we took some good questions from the listeners and from the viewers. And it was it wasn't really a quick one. We ended up going almost over 31 minutes. So, and that was a testament to you guys. So we appreciate you guys for joining in. Again, follow us on Twitter. Let me throw that up here on the banner right quick for you. Follow the show on Twitter at SEC Nightly. How about that? A little fancy editing software we got here on SEC Nightly. It's the big bucks, right? It's the big time right here. So, yeah, follow us on Twitter over there at SEC Nightly. And how about this one? We can even post a question. So let's go get to our last one. Boom. How about this one? From Bell Tramas. I'm not even going to say the back end of that name. If they signed the 2 linemen, is that enough to keep the number 1 class? Yeah, they're going to keep the number 1 class unless something crazy happens with Alabama. McKinley Jackson, I think he does end up there at Alabama, but I do think they lose a couple in their class as well. So how about that? That's a little incentive to get some questions in. And you know what? We'll take a couple more minutes. I know I'm having fun time here. I know some of the people listening are as well. So we'll take some more questions. If that's not anything, if that's not incentive to get it in, you get to see your name, even if it is inappropriate. Mr. Dickersonis, I guess is your broadcast name. If they sign Van Pran and Broderick Jones, yes, number 1 class locked up on all recruiting services. Look, they're number 3 right now on SIAllamerican.com. That's because John does it a little bit different. John is a friend of this show, and I think the way he does it is much better. He doesn't just take into account the that particular class. He takes the 2 deep for the last 2 classes. So basically what that means is if Georgia signs 2 5-star running backs in the 2019 class, and then in 2020 they sign a 5-star and another 4-star, well, that other 4-star is probably not going to get much playing time and probably not get much run there. So it doesn't value as much in that SI All-American ranking. It takes the 2 deep into consideration, which I think is a required aspect to the recruiting services, right? What you are and what your roster is determines and dictates what, or at least should, if you're a good recruiting team, should dictate who you go after in terms of talents. All right, last question. Sorry I'm late, but what freshman do you expect to get immediate playing time? I'm assuming at Georgia, Chaz. Is that what we're talking about? I'm guessing that's what we're talking about here, Chaz Crawford. Let me put his comment up on the screen. Let's attack Georgia in particular first, okay? Some freshmen that I think will, get early playing time. One, let's see here. Jalen Carter going to get some playing time. Okay, that defensive line, when you lose Tyler Clark to graduation, when you lose Michael Barnett to graduation as well. I know Trayvon Walker's up in there, and he's going to get a lot of run. But Jalen Carter just got his 5-star, and rightly so. He's going to get some playing time next year as a true freshman. On the offensive end, Darnell Washington's going to play a lot. I think he has to, right? You lose Charlie Wolf it's Charlie Wolf. I've done that multiple times on here. You lose Eli Wolf and Charlie Warner. You're going to have to fill that up just a little bit in terms of tight end talent. Darnell Washington's going to do that. And Jermaine Burton, I know there was, some rumblings about whether or not he was going to play early and, be eligible to play early. And he is. He's going to be cleared. He's going to be good to go. And I think he's with Dominique Blaylock. I know ACL surgeries and ACL recoveries have gotten much, much quicker in the last, 5 or 10 years. Most notably, Adrian Peterson coming back from one in what seemed to be 6 months. That, to me, that doesn't mean that Dominique Blaylock's that type of physical specimen. I think it's going to take 8, 9, 10 months before he's fully back to what he can and will be there in the slot at Georgia. So look for Jermaine Burton to get in there and play a good bit. On to our next question. Brooks, do you think it's possible to flip 5-star commit like Pickens last year? I said it on SEC Nightly last night. I don't think Georgia has any, intentions to flip any big-time commits right now. They're pretty much full, right? 22 commits and signees currently in the 2020 class. They've got their eyes on Ladd McConkey. They've got their eyes on DJ Lundy. They got to finish up with Broderick, and they got to finish up with Cedric Van Pran. Assuming that they do all of those things, that pretty much puts them full. So I don't think they're going to go out and flip anybody. And to be honest with you, Kirby flips top 100 commits. And if you go through the top 100 on 24/7 or Rivals or any one of them, about 80% of those guys are already signed. So there's not much left to be flipping anyways. Back to our freshman conversation, young guys conversation, right? I would be remiss if I didn't mention Keely Ringo. Keely Ringo is going to get on the field. Assuming Broderick Jones signs at Georgia, I think a lot of that has to do with an early indication, not necessarily a promise, because I don't think Kirby Smart does anything along the lines in terms of promising playing time. But I think he would be joining the Georgia roster with some type of indication or wink, wink, or nudge, nudge that he's going to get a chance to fight for playing time. But based off our film session over there, I'm a big trust guy. Big trust. Number 73, big guys. If you guys haven't watched Xavier Truss play, y'all need to go watch some tape from last season. Check out the Murray State game. Check out the Georgia Tech game. Xavier Truss is going to be moving some people in the near future at the University of Georgia. And all the word out of practice and out of camp and out of Athens and out of that coaching staff is that Xavier Truss impressed more than anybody else in that freshman class at the tackle position in particular. And that's where they're going to have to fill, right? I mean, you lose Cade Mays to a transfer. You lose Isaiah Wilson, which I still think is a bit of a shock because I know he has NFL traits, right? 6'7", 330 pounds, built like a brick shit house. But I think he was really, really raw and could have really, gained some experience, some well-needed experience by coming back for a third year as a starting tackle in the SEC. All right, let's get to P. Rich's question here. Brooks, which true sophomore steps up the most for us next season? P. Rich, I'm going to assume here, again, because most of my social following is Georgia fans. I'm going to assume you're a Georgia fan. And again, if you followed any of my film breakdowns, you already know how much of a fan I am of Tyreek Stevenson. And I'm just picturing Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning having 8 or 9 months to figure out what the hell they're going to do with number 7 on defense next year. And I think it's going to be absolutely bonkers. I think he's going to be all over the field. And look, I know Nolan Smith, and like the comments right here with Bell Tramus Bell, you're going to have to help me out. We're going to call you Bell from now on, since you seem to be a big fan of the show. Bell, I think Nolan Smith is a good suggestion. That outside linebackers room is really, really crowded. So is the DB's room, but Tyreek Stevenson is going to play a bunch next year. Is going to play an impact role. Is going to be a ball hawk. You're going to see him all over the field. As far as if you guys haven't figured, and they may change their defensive philosophy this next season, especially with their offense changing in terms of quick strikes. So they might play a little bit more of an aggressive style of play on the defensive end. But I just don't know if you're ever going to see, at least our history shows us at the University of Georgia currently with Kirby Smart as the head coach. I just don't know if you're going to see a Georgia defensive end or a Georgia edge rusher finish with 10 or 11 sacks. That's just not what they do. They don't rush upfield. They play gap scheme. They play, gap fundamental and gap sound defense. And it's not me defense. It's we defense. Okay. They play as a unit, which is why I think guys like Tyreek Stevenson and guys like Nakobe Dean, right? How about Nakobe Dean going to get a ton of reps next year with Tate Crowder headed off to the NFL via graduation? So we're still taking questions here, guys. I know we said we are going to cut it up early and get out of here, but questions keep flowing in. We're having a good time, and we're having some decent viewerships here as well. So we're going to keep taking them. Let's see here. Am I making a mock roster prediction of who I think starts? Yeah, we've already got that out on our YouTube page right now. We did a projected starting rosters for the offense in particular. So as far as the defense goes, I think the defensive line is going to be a shuffling hat like it always is. It's all based off personnel. Whatever the opponent puts out on the field first snap, that's what they respond to based off the packaging. Now, offensive line-wise, I can tell you what I think it's going to be right now just off the top of my head. I think Jamari Sawyer is going to start at right tackle. This is really tough here. I think Trey Hill's going to start at center. Ben Cleveland at right guard. At left guard, I like Justin Schaefer to get the start. The senior is going to play really, really physical brand of football in his last season there in Athens. And at left tackle, I think that's the open competition. I like Xavier Truss to get the opportunity to play, especially with Tate Ratledge not already being enrolled at the school. I think he's still got to finish up. I don't know if the Darlington school up there allows people to get in and early enroll. P. Rich, we'll see you next time. Appreciate you for joining in. Peace out to you, brother. But again, back to the starting role, you know who's going to start at wide receiver, right? It's going to be George Pickens. It's going to be Demetrius Robinson. It's going to Robertson. Excuse me. I don't know why I always want to call him Robinson. Demetrius Robertson. You're going to see a lot of Matt Landers. I don't know why. I don't understand it. If I didn't, if I wasn't worried about getting my media credential pulled, I would probably ask Kirby Smart what he even sees in Matt Landers. But I'm never going to do it again because I ain't getting my creds pulled for taking a shot at Matt Landers. I don't know what he sees in him, but he sees something because he continues to play the guy and continues to roll him out there. So you're going to see Matt Landers play on the outside as well. I think the young guys, though, at the wide receiver position are going to get a real shot to play early. I think Trey McKitty gets most of the starts at the tight end position, despite John Fitzpatrick being the, quote-unquote veteran on the roster. But then again, we're talking about a guy who has one career catch at the University of Georgia. So I don't know what's going to go on there at the tight end position. I think you're going to see a lot of four wide next year. That's for sure. Zeus is going to start at the tailback position. Defensively, I think Lewis Seen, actually, I'm pretty sure. I don't think you can say at this point, but I'm pretty sure Lewis Seen is going to get the opportunity to start in J.R. Reed's place there at safety alongside Richard LeCount. And then your corners aren't changing either. Eric Stokes and DJ Daniel are going to play those corner spots for the University of Georgia next year, and they're going to play them well. I don't know, and I could be a homer here. I guess you could tell me what's going on there at LSU's maybe a little more attractive in terms of having the total star power there in Derek Stingley Jr. at the cornerback position, but try to find me a pair of corners that can lock down a man-to-man like DJ Daniel and Eric Stokes. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a better pair. And if you can, hit the comments right there and send those questions in as well. I know we've said this a couple times tonight, but we really are going to wrap up in the next 4 or 5 minutes. So any more questions, recruiting questions in particular, if you want my take on Zach Evans or if you just want a hot take in general, serve one up in the comment section right there, and we'll get after it. But, we are going to be breaking down tight ends tonight. I'm excited to do it. I did some Trey McKitty film earlier in the year. Not earlier in the year. It was about, maybe 10 days ago or so at this point. Time seems like it's flying, but it's really dragging because we're doing so much work. You are so right there, Bell. Tyson Campbell does need to step up. We're going to put that on the board right here. I don't know if it's that he needs to step up or if it's that he needs to stay healthy or if it's whether or not he needs to move back to the safety position. I mean, how about this one? And I'm just spitballing here. I know Mark Webb's going to be back next year, and he made every start at the star position when healthy. But if I'm Kirby Smart, if I'm Dan Lanning, I like the idea of running Lewis Seen, Richard LeCount at the two deep safety positions, Tyson Campbell at the star, Eric Stokes at the cornerback, and DJ Daniel at the cornerback as well. That, to me, is the DB crew that I would roll out with. Especially if I'm playing a team that loves to throw the football. I think Mark Webb is a good open field tackler. I think he's a good presence in the run game from the star position. I just don't know, whether or not some people would call him a liability in pass protection or in pass situations. I'm not going to go as far as to say that. But that being said, I think Tyson Campbell, that's a decision and a talking point that we really need to pay attention to the rest of the offseason, especially during spring practice. And we'll be paying attention to it when we're up there in Athens. But I think whatever number 3's doing in spring practice will give you an indication about what's going on in the back end. But again, I think if you were to roll out Eric Stokes, DJ Daniel at corner, Tyson Campbell at the star position, Richard LeCount and Lewis Seen at the deep safeties. I just don't know if it gets much better than that. All right, next question from Jay Convict here. Are there any players besides James Cook that you think could enter the transfer portal for any reasons? I don't like to speculate on whether or not guys are going to leave the program. It's a really, tricky situation about, because I don't know what's really going on in practice, because there's not practice right now. But come spring practice, when you see like last year, prime example, Brenton Cox played through the spring game. And then after that, his reps were really, during that whole process, his reps were really diminishing. He was going from running with the twos to next thing you know, running with the threes to next thing you know, borderline practice squad. Okay. That kind of stuff, when you see that kind of stuff happen when guys are falling like a rock down the depth chart, that's the indication of when guys are really going to start entering transfer portals, start seeking, other employment, for a lack of a better term. That's what it is. They're seeking further employment at another institution. So I think that's to still be played out, right? Because spring practice for, as a former college athlete, spring practice is where jobs are won and lost. Okay. You may have been 4th or 5th on the depth chart headed into, the last football game of the season, but you have 12 dynamite practices during spring, and you could enter next fall's camp as 1 or 2 on the depth chart. I mean, it happens all the time. There's guys that skyrocket through the depth chart every single year at Division I spring camp. So it's bound to happen for someone. It's just about whether or not who it's going to be. Now, I think some of these, redshirt freshman tackles might, start to. I know there's not a ton of depth at that position, but some of these guys are going to get out recruited and over recruited at that position in particular. Now, James Cook, I know that's the one on the screen. I don't have any indication, nor is there any hint rumors or whispers about James Cook actually entering the transfer portal. In fact, most of the whispers are about whether or not he's going to play a better and bigger role in the 2020 season, because Todd Monken is going to be running some empty sets. If you go back there and watch him at Cleveland, his back that he liked to do that with was Kareem Hunt. He'd split him out into the slot. Hell, he'd even play him out wide in a wide receiver position. Now, whether or not that was for a pure decoy and pure personnel and just formational standpoint, because he was never really the intended target on a play. That doesn't mean that James Cook's not going to play a more enhanced role in 2020. So what we got here, players can fly up the chart like my guy Jordan Davis. That is a good point, Bell. Jordan was a guy who actually really rose up through the depth chart mid-season his freshman year, right? By game 6, game 7 back in the 2018 season. Most folks don't remember Georgia was atrocious in the run game in 2018 through the first 6 or 7 football games, giving up, I think, about 160 yards per game on the ground. I went back and broke it down when I was doing a Jordan Davis bio player spotlight kind of article a while back on SI's Bulldog Maven. Feel free to check that out. Just search Jordan Davis Bulldog Maven. I'm sure something will pop up. But Georgia was atrocious in the run game for the first 6 or 7 games last year, and then insert big 6'6", 330-pound clogger in Jordan Davis, and oh my, run game problem seems to have ceased. And what that is, guys, is they play a traditional, they're listed as a 3-4, 3-5 defense, or a 3-4, defense. They technically play 3 down linemen and then 2 outside linebackers. But you see them play with a lot of forehands down in the dirt a lot of the times. But nonetheless, Jordan Davis, for that defense to work, that nose tackle has to occupy multiple blockers. Okay, he has to occupy double teams in order to free up space for those linebackers like Monty Rice and Tay Crowder did so well this past season. Okay, who were the 2 leading tacklers this last year at Georgia? Monty Rice, Tay Crowder. Why? Because Jordan Davis was eating up blocks in the middle. So was Tyler Clark. For the better part on the edge, especially, so was Azeez Ojulari. Okay, so what your defense line does obviously plays a role in how well your linebackers play and how well your defense plays against the run in particular. Especially that defense. They play gap football, like we were talking about. There is no slants, right, at Georgia. I mean, they might do some twists and stuff on pass rushing situations, but you never see the University of Georgia's defensive line under Kirby Smart slant and do any goofy stuff on running downs to try to, win reps, because they don't have to. They play big boy football, meaning defensive linemen, to get physical or to get technical here, defensive linemen are taught to shock, engage, stand up offensive linemen, win the point of attack, do not give ground, and then shed blockers as the ball carrier enters their hole. Okay, there is no slants. Again, there is no run around blockers. There is none of that. You are to physically engage, strike, and butt and press, as football coaches say, and get off your block. But again, man, we are way too long into tonight's film session, tonight's broadcast, man. We appreciate you guys for listening. I do have to go. I have to get out of here. But if you guys have liked the broadcast, man, show the support. You know how to show the support. Wherever you're watching us, give us some support. I appreciate you for doing that. Like, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter at BrooksAustinSI. And as has been ticking on the bottom of the screen for the last, probably 30 so odd minutes, follow the show on Twitter at SEC Nightly. That's the show, guys. We appreciate you guys for joining. We will see you Monday night, 9 p.m., probably recap the Super Bowl. I'm sure there'll be some type of breaking news. After all, it is the SEC. Something will happen, I guarantee it, in the next 48 hours. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. This has been SEC Nightly. I've been your humble host, Brooks Austin. We will see you guys next time.